For the first time since January 2023, which was just after Bryan Kohberger was arrested, attorneys, police, and other officials connected to the Idaho quadruple murders are finally free, legally free, to talk about the case in public. On camera, online, in print, in the town square, wherever and however they like. And that cheer that you may have heard from newsrooms across the country and fans of public, not hooded justice, it erupted when the judge in Boise, Idaho lifted that dreaded gag order this morning, technically called a non-dissemination order. Whatever you want to call it, it's kept all official sources on the perplexing murder case muzzled for 2.5 years. The point was, and it was a good one, to keep Kohberger's jury pool from becoming tainted with too much information, both good and bad, that may or may not be allowed into evidence. But since Kohberger saved the state and the rest of us the trouble and expense of a trial, the judge said that he can no longer justify gagging all of that information from being made public to you and to me. And furthermore, he said, at this point, quote, the rights of the public to information in this case are paramount. And I say, finally. Even the prosecutor was on board, but not so much Kohberger's defense team.
I would only say, Your Honor, as this court is well aware, the publicity in this case is so extensive and emotions are already so high that adding fuel to the fire of media interviews or a rush to interview people as they leave the courthouse or enter the courthouse would only increase the concerns that the defense has. And even though the plea has a specific sentence attached to it, as this court is well aware, things happen in plea hearings and, sentencing hearings. And to minimize the possibility of that, we request that this order stay in place.
Didn't win. Not really, anyway. Very interesting. Things happen at sentencing hearings, like withdrawing your plea. Yeah, that can happen. But if it's any consolation to Team Kohberger, there is also the separate issue of literally hundreds and hundreds of sealed court documents, not one of which will be automatically unsealed with the ending of this gag. Most of it will be public eventually, but each will be reread with many parts redacted, and that is going to take time, like months. And it won't even start to happen until after Kohberger is sentenced on Wednesday of next week. And until that moment when the gavel comes down on his case and he's led away to his forever cell, Kohberger could technically try to wiggle out of his guilty plea. Or he could file appeals that he gave up his right to file. I want to read to you part of an email that prosecutors sent to the families of the victims. Okay, so there is Supreme Court case law that states if a defendant who has waived appeal directs his attorney to file a notice of appeal, the attorney is required to file notice. This does not change the fact that defendant has waived his right to obtain any relief on appeal and that any appeal should be dismissed. Similarly, while the defendant has waived all rights to appeal, he could still claim ineffective assistance from his defense counsel. The state is not concerned about this possibility or the possibility that the defendant would have any success if he did explore either of these avenues. This basically means, careful, we are not at the end of the line yet, and Bryan Kohberger could still turn the screws on us before the gavel comes down. So I'm going to stop here and bring in our national correspondent, Brian Enton, who's been following this case since the beginning. So it's interesting, Brian, as we were all watching this today, I think a lot of people were confused when they heard that Bryan Kohberger could appeal still. We all heard it, he had waived his right to appeal. But it's interesting that the defense attorney for Kohberger says that lifting this gag order could affect the sentencing. Can you explain it?
Yeah, I mean, you picked up on the same exact quote of the entire hearing. This was the thing that I picked up on the most. Things happen at sentencing. I thought, what exactly does that mean? And she wasn't really that specific. I think what she meant, and she basically said it, is emotions are high. It's already a very, very emotional time for the families. It's going to be an emotional day. And what is really the point of, you know, bringing more out before the sentencing next Wednesday? But things happen at sentencing. I still don't really know what things exactly that she's talking about. And she said, like, you know what I'm talking about, but I don't know what she was talking about. So that was interesting. In terms of the appeal, this is something that has concerned the families all along. You know, he signed the agreement that says he's not going to appeal, but the Supreme Court has ruled that everybody has a right to an appeal, and he could later on say, I didn't have a good lawyer, I got bad advice, and I didn't know necessarily what I was signing, and he could try to appeal that way. Granted, it would be tough. I mean, this is Bryan Kohberger. He was a criminology, getting his PhD. He clearly knew exactly what he was signing, and that would probably come out. So the chances are low, but it's possible.
Yeah, that collective cacophony that you hear in the background is all of America laughing about the idea that he would even raise the issue that his attorney, Ann Taylor, was ineffective. I have never seen an attorney be more effective on his behalf, including just yesterday, Brian Enton. Yesterday, she filed a motion saying, you know what? I think we need to be careful here. I've got to protect the process. I have to be a good lawyer and make sure that he is protected all the way through to sentencing, including the issue of ineffective assistance of counsel. So sorry, Brian, if that's your idea, it's a stinker. You're never going to prevail there. Okay, the thing that also stood out to me in some of the motion that Ann Taylor and the defense team filed was she pointed to danger. She said there are threats to Bryan Kohberger, to Bryan Kohberger's family, and to court staff. Didn't say what the threats were or who among the court staff, but I found that pretty surprising.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody involved in it. Talk to the victims' families. They are all getting threats. They get harassed all the time. There's these conspiracy theorists out there. There's awful people online. You see them, Ashleigh. So I wasn't that surprised by that. Again, I don't know if you heard this, but the judge made a point of saying, we're going to make sure that Bryan Kohberger's parents have security when they come in, and they'll come in a special way, and we'll make sure to protect them. I know for a fact that not all the victims' families got that kind of treatment. So the judge has really gone out of his way, I think, to protect the Kohberger parents. And I'm sure they have received threats. Everybody in the case has.
I think Bill Thompson, the prosecutor, as well as the judge, he said people reached out to him directly. He said that at the appeal hearing. And can I just say, Brian, you and I probably both are on the same page with this, but anybody who's suggesting that Bryan Kohberger's parents should be threatened or his sisters should be threatened, there is one person who did this horrible thing. There is one person responsible for this horrible thing, and it is Bryan Kohberger. And anybody who takes it out on anyone else is not doing this democracy of ours any favors. That is the face you should hate. That is the man who is fully responsible for what happened. Brian, I know you're going to be busy until sentencing, so thank you for this update. I do appreciate it. Also, I want to let you know here that Steve Goncalves, whose daughter Kaylee died when Kohberger used a K-bar knife to kill her, he has fiercely opposed the plea agreement that spared that killer's life. And he wanted all of the case files and the court orders released before the murderer's sentencing, so that he and his family could know what happened to Kaylee and then prepare and craft their victims' impact statements accordingly. And that's not going to happen now. He's not getting that information. And he's angry with the prosecutor, Bill Thompson, for the way that all of this has played out, even today's quote-unquote unsealing. And I had an opportunity to speak just a little earlier today with Steve Goncalves for my Drop Dead Serious podcast. Here's our conversation. Steve, what was your reaction to the decision today that the gag order will be lifted, but the motions won't be unsealed? Not yet, anyway.
You know, we requested for basically Kaylee, what happened to Kaylee. So I know her sisters want to do a victim statement and address the exacts, some of the things that happened to her. And they basically wouldn't share any information with us on what happened to her. So I'm pretty used to how ridiculous, not just a gag order, but sealing something that has nothing to do with the victim's rights. It's all about, hate to say it, but it is a lot to do with the media and people being put on cameras and not knowing what to say, or things coming out that they didn't mean to say, or just didn't have a good explanation of what was going on. So they wrap this seal thing around trying to pretend like they're, trying to protect people and doing all that, but they gave out people's initials at the very beginning. So it's just a dog and pony show that we're supposed to pretend like, like there's top secret information inside these docs. It's pretty gross, and we're fed up with it, and we're glad that it's over. And we just, you only got one time to be able to be a victim's advocate and say what you need to say and to address the courtroom and everyone in Idaho. And they're not gonna let us know exactly what happened. So it's just terrible. You're gonna go in there, we're gonna make statements, and we're like, we don't want to say anything inaccurate. We want to make sure everything we say is exactly truthful. And it's one of those times where they could bend the rules, but they don't.
I seem to recall there was some discussion that the judge was going to meet with families and tell you privately things that were going to be released in the gag order. Is that still a possibility, or is there no discussion of that?
There's no discussion of that. We just, Shannon just sent him an email and just said, are you really going to make my clients go through 3 different agencies to get this information that they want to see, like go through Freedom of Information Acts for the state of Idaho, for the county of Latah, and then, there's federal ones as well. There's even other states. So it's like they could make it happen, but clearly the willpower isn't there. I don't think they really want anyone talking to the media and questioning. Remember, these people said that it was a crime of passion, it was targeted, and it was an isolated event. All this language, and then they even said, you're gonna have to trust us. You're just gonna have to wait and trust us. And now we've waited, and it's like, no. Well, there was no connection whatsoever that we could establish. So how do you get isolated? How do you get targeted? So I think it's more about covering up some of the mistakes that they made. They don't want to talk about destroying the crime scene and how questionable that was. So they just say, well, we're gagged, and now that the gag's over, you guys aren't going to know exactly what we were talking about during the last 2.5 years.
Was there any contact made or any overture at all from the prosecutor's office, the victim's rights advocate that's supposed to be associated with you, about the process going forward now in order to find out more information? Have they at least guided you? Will you have a better shot at getting information than someone like me?
No, they don't like us. They don't like the fact that we question their authority. They don't like the fact that we talk to you guys right now. So I don't think they'll help us at all. They'll try to make it as most difficult as possible because we bring a huge spotlight. If we're gonna read it, we're gonna explain it to people how we understand it, and I don't think they want that attention. And that's probably why most of them have already retired. So. I don't think we're going to get any help. We don't have a victim's advocate. She's bound by the rules of that court. So if the judge tells her to shut her mouth and don't talk about it, there's an open investigation of the leak, and she's a part of that team. She can't talk to us. We brought up the leak in court January 13th. Gray accused that office of leaking the information, and ever since then, we've been able to prove that we knew about the sheaf and the DNA, CODIS hit, all that stuff before. And you think if there's an investigation, why hasn't anyone ever called us and asked us where we heard it? So there's no investigation going on. They're lying to Hitler if they're telling him there's an investigation. There's no investigation going on because the first person who told you that there was leaks and proved to you by telling you what they've heard, that eventually becomes part of your case. The sheep, we knew about the sheep before it was. We knew about the white car before they released it. They never came and asked us who told us that information. They didn't even try. So,
Who was it?
Oh, I would never. I'm not going to give that information out. You know, I really respect the people that actually reached out and tried to help us. They're awesome mothers and fathers, and they cared about their community, and they wanted to make sure that this was done the right way. And so, yeah, we did know some stuff, but I respect all those people, and I would never give out their information. And they're all safe.
Understanding.
Every person I've ever talked to.
It makes perfect sense. You got a loyalty to those who loved you and cared for you throughout this horrible process. In the interim, I kept thinking along the way there would be things that you know that we don't know, and that you were sworn to secrecy because of the gag order or any other reasons. Is there information you know now that I haven't known and the rest of us haven't known up until today?
Most of the information we found out were just people calling up. I've had other officers call us up and just say, I don't know what just happened in the court today, but I don't support it. People so angry at what was happening in that courtroom that they would literally pick up their phone and call us and say, this is what's on Bryan's phone. This is what he was searching. This individual was sexually motivated. I don't care what Thompson said. They've got a plan for him. They've got a job role for that man. And it's not every day that you get somebody who wants to be a police officer, is dying to be a police officer, is literally talking to them every single day about how he was going to be a police officer. It's not every day you get a master's degree in criminology that is going to go into prison, and they're going to leverage that. That's what they're interested in. They're not interested in him being locked up in 23 hours of solitaire where he's not going to be able to have any influence. They want him to go in there and actually have influence and work with them.
And be a resource for crime fighting in the future?
Yeah. His fantasy was to be an officer, or the earliest one was like a Green Beret or something like that, a ranger. So this guy's had like these grandeur visions of himself since he was just a little kid. And I think one of the first things he told the officers when they arrested him in Pennsylvania was like, let's get a cup of coffee. I'm working on my criminology PhD, and I'd like to interview you. It's like, this guy wants to be a cop or wants to be somebody of importance. He always has been. And that was part of the reason why we were trying to get them to take that into account and not plead with him. Don't give him the position of power. Basically dictate the terms to him and say we're not going to accept this unless you prove who you are.
Still fascinated by the comment he made upon arrest. Have you arrested anyone else? Thinking, is he throwing a red herring in? Is he really curious about other possible suspects? But I'm very curious about what you just mentioned, that coming out of hearings, there would be people who would call you and say, I don't like what's happening in that courtroom. I know what's on his phone. I know. What did you learn from those phone calls without divulging who it was who called?
Just weird porn fetishes, but two of the fetishes were in that room. Drunk, passed out girls and gagging girls. And those are two things that were part of that crime scene. For Thompson to say that there was no sexual assault, of course there wasn't. He didn't have enough time. Somebody came up there. But why are you defending somebody who just killed 4 people? Why are you not even making him stand in the courtroom and admit that he killed 4 people? I mean, it's upside down world sometimes when you go in those court systems and they're literally, oh, you've been so respectful. You can sit down when you plead guilty, with a yes and no answer. So we're just glad to be done with it. We're glad to move on.
When you said drunk, passed out girls, gagging girls, was there something that happened at the crime scene involving gagging that you heard?
Yeah. That's what we've heard. That's why we want to get all these facts straight. So we don't want to have a statement that isn't accurate. But when you have a prosecution that just is okay with covering everything up and not telling you what's going on, it's hard to be accurate. And they've criticized us for not being accurate on certain things. And it's because we're not getting the facts. Parents shouldn't have to beg to know what happened to their kid the last 24 hours of their life. We figured out everything that we could. We got the grub truck video before they did. We got the white car. We got the 112 surveillance even before they got it. We were the ones that tell them to go to these cameras and pull them off. I'm sure they already were going to do that anyway, but we got it before they did. So they were just concerned that, you know, they weren't in control and we knew too much stuff, and, you know, it's unfortunate.
Did
All right.
someone did
We're
someone
running out of time.
did someone with the investigation describe that Kaylee or Maddie was gagged during this horrible crime?
I was told that by somebody in. I can give that out. That was Babbitt. That was Babbitt who gave that information.
What did she say? That's, and I just, for our viewers right now, Kathy
There was some
Babbitt.
damage. There was some damage around her mouth, right here, like somebody had, like, pressed in and like tried to keep her quiet.
That is information we had not heard before. Just want to let you know something before I mention anything more about Kathy Babbitt, the coroner. I've just gotten confirmation that Steve and the family will all be at the sentencing. There was some question about it before. He was so upset at the appellate, or the hearing for the plea bargain, that he walked out. And there was some concern that maybe he had a conflict with his child's school. And now I'm being told they've got a plan to reserve 10 seats for the Goncalves family in the courtroom for sentencing next week, and that Steve and his wife Christy and Kaylee's sister Olivia plan to make statements. Now back to the coroner, Kathy Babbitt, the Latah County coroner, somebody we spoke with shortly after the murders, you might remember. I remember her confirming to us on this show that all of the kids had been stabbed repeatedly with a large hunting knife and that they were in their beds when they were murdered. I just want to say my great thanks to Steve Goncalves. You could hear he was on his way out of the house, so he did that interview as a real favor. You can hear the rest of our conversation on my Drop Dead Serious podcast, which drops literally right this minute.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.